Thank you for joining us today for Sunday Conversations. Today, the Father's Day Takeover, we have a candid conversation about a father's influence. Sit back, enjoy, and delight yourselves with these conversations. Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Conversations. I am Minister Isaac, and today we have the Father's Day edition of Sunday Conversations. We have a great group of men that will be joining in with me, but I won't be facilitating this one. This time we got a surprise facilitator, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce or allow the facilitator for this panel to go ahead and introduce everybody. So let me bring everybody in. Welcome, fellas, to the Father's Day edition of Sunday Conversations.
Absolutely. Welcome. Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Glad to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Pastor, we're going to let you go ahead and handle this. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Well, welcome, as Minister Isaac said, to our Father's Day edition of Sunday Conversations. And I just want to say happy Father's Day, especially to the fathers that make up this discussion panel for this morning's Sunday Conversation, as well as to the fathers of LWC3, New Zion Baptist Church, and the fathers who are covenant partners with our LWC3 ministry. So once again, happy Father's Day to you all. I am honored to introduce this awesome panel that's going to provide some great discussion on today that we believe is going to be a blessing, not only to the fathers, but to the mothers and others as well. So first up to bat, we have Pastor Frank Butler Jr., who is the pastor of New Zion Baptist Church. He's actually been a father since November the 7th, 1980. So he's bringing over 41 years of experience to the discussion. And as a caveat, it's great to have my biological big bro be a part of the discussion. Not only that, but he's going to be bringing our awesome word this morning at our Word and Worship experience. So Pastor Frank, we welcome you and the New Zion Baptist Church family to Fredericksburg, Virginia, and to our Sunday Conversations.
Thank you.
Next,
Pastor.
we have
glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Next, we have our very own Deacon Tony Lee, our illustrious deacon, if I can categorize him that way. Me personally, he's the husband to our very own Minister Lee, who happens to be my sister. Deacon Lee has been a father since February the 9th, 1991. So he's bringing over 31 years of experience to the discussion. So Deacon Lee, sir, welcome to Sunday Conversations.
Thank you, sir.
And we have our very own Minister Isaac, our faithful supporter in so many areas of the ministry. He's an elder-elect. He's a part of our finance committee, AV, confidant, you name it. Some part of his influence is there making a difference in the ministry. And he's been a father since September the 7th, 1994. So he's bringing over 27 years of experience to the conversation. So Minister Isaac, probably don't get to say this that often. Welcome to Sunday.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And myself, I've been a father since December the 8th, 1988. So I bring over 33 years of experience to the conversation. So together with the men that we have here that's a part of the panel, we bring over 132 years of being a father between the four of us to the discussion. So thank you, gentlemen, for taking the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. So the theme for our Father's Day is a father under the influence, or FUI. And one of the base scriptures that we've been using as far as a thought and having the opportunity to glean from, you can find there in Proverbs chapter 4. But when we're talking about a father under the influence, and that's really going to be the scope of our discussion on today, is really going to be about the influences in our lives. And we have a couple of questions that we want to take a methodical approach to go through that we believe is going to be a blessing to everyone that hears. But when we're talking about the father under the influence, a father under the influence of God is a father who has a basic understanding of the biblical requirements of a father. That's the first thing. The second thing, he is a principled man, determined to be guided by the influence of God the Father, Jesus Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And finally, although not perfect, I'll use this acronym FUI for Father Under the Influence, has a rooted and grounded fixture, watch this, on overcoming the challenges of fatherhood to impact those whom he fathered, as well as others who glean from his position of influence being a father as well. So when we're talking about influence, there was two baseline definitions that we want to use that I believe is going to help us to shape the discussion. The first definition in its noun form as it relates to an influence is the power or capacity or causing an effect in indirect or intangible ways. It means to sway. It's the act or power of producing an effect without apparent exertion of force or direct exercise of command. That's the noun expression of the word influence. Here's the verb expression. And we have an opportunity today in our discussion to allow the noun form of the word influence as well as the verb form of the influence to help sort of kind of shape our thought process as we transition through some of the questions and things that's going to shape or provide the baseline foundation for our discussion. We're talking about the verb form. It's to affect or alter by indirect or intangible means. Think about that for a moment. It's to have an effect on the condition, and I love this one, the condition or development of. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about influence. Here's the first question that we want to tackle for the brothers, and it's for all of us to jump in. I'm going to start with Deacon Lee on this one. Who influenced you the most as a father? Now, that can be in a plethora of ways. You're talking about family, business, leading, advising, etc. Who influenced you the most as a father?
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, the person that influenced me the most as a father was my father. And my father provided all of that for me. My dad taught me how to keep family first. Family is big to my father. My father is just a family man. You know, God first, but family. Business, I've worked with my dad, since 1994 when I got out of the Army. So I've watched him. Even before then, when I was coming up as a little guy, I watched my dad run his business, from 1985. So I got my business influence from him. Leading and advising, I've watched him manage since 1985. I watched him. He's been nothing but a leader the whole time I've known my dad, just about, because he's been a deacon as long as I can remember. So the person that I would say influenced me the most as a father, I would have to say would be my father. No doubt about that.
Awesome. Minister Isaac.
I would definitely say that it's my father as well. I've watched, as I was coming up, he showed me exactly how to be a man. He also taught me how to be a great dad. And even with his limited amount of education, the things that he knew, his life experiences, is definitely what he taught me, and that's something that I'm definitely greatly appreciative of. Okay,
Pastor Frank, sir.
I would say initially it was our father. Dad has always been a hands-on type of guy, so some of the core things that makes a household successful, he taught me how to work with my hands. He taught me how to deal with the public. Showed me the importance of providing for your family. Those were the things that I basically learned from him, because I was at his leg from a child. Even now, there's still projects that he and I still take part in. But some of the other things that make a father successful within his family, I learned from other people, and not so much that they took my hand and showed me things, but I learned from an observer's perspective, where you watch people and you see how they interact with their children, you see how they interact with their wives, you see the things that are important to him. They prioritize things. So not to take away from our dad, but our dad was always being busy. And so I learned, once I became a father, one of the things I always wanted to do was be available for my family at whatever cost. If my kid was participating in something, I was always there. As a matter of fact, I was involved in what was there. So I've seen that from other people, other fathers within my family, within my community. I saw the way my uncle dealt with his kids and was always available. I saw people in the community. So the basic things I learned from my dad, but some of the more other things I learned from other people.
Right, because the thing is, and what was driving that part of the question that I think is important, because statistically, you find, fathers per se that can be absent from different platforms with being a good father, being there for their children. So I think it's imperative, especially as we're talking about the influence of something in the day and age that we're living in, to make sure that we have the right influences, in our life. Because, I can echo the same thing that all of you said. I think we're betting 1,000 on this one, that it was most definitely my father. I mean, because he was the first man that I knew in that particular capacity. And I'll echo some of the things that Pastor Frank was saying. He taught us a lot. So I can say at the core of who I am as a father, I know that those things came from our dad. I would not exclude the other men, but that's a different part of the discussion. We'll get to a little bit later. But we had the opportunity to glean from good men, whether it was in the church, in the community. For me personally, being a sports buff, playing sports since I can remember, there were a number of my coaches who I looked at and how they handled themselves as men and fathers around their children. Not only that, but how they handled me as an athlete that was there under their guidance. So I think that we can pull from a lot of different streams to help shape us. But the important thing is that whether we understand it or not, there are influences that are around us in some way, shape, or form, either in a positive way or a negative way, that has the potential to influence how we as men father our families. So when you look at that, the second question is really a springboard from that, because when you look at your father and our fathers, and who we're saying were the ones that influenced us the most, and this is where the rubber meets the road, because I don't believe that we have those influences. We've come into that knowledge, just by happenstance or not having the opportunity to learn from it or grow from it. So when you came into fatherhood, think about this, and I gave the dates that we all entered the moment that, hey, a child was born unto us, and I have to father. When you go back to those those moments, some of us, we had a 9-month period of preparation, but when that moment was actually upon you, what are some of the practices that you learned from your father, whom you've now categorized as one of the chief influences in your life? What are some of the things that you immediately implemented from your father, who we're saying at this juncture influenced us the most? Minister Isaac, can you tackle that one?
Ooh. I think that one of the very first things that I influenced, or that my father influenced me, that I did with my son. To this day, I cannot recall a time that I've heard my dad say, "I love you." Not saying that he has, not saying that he hasn't. It's just I do not ever recall it. And so because I don't recall it, it's definitely the very first thing that I implemented when I had my son, is that I want to make sure that I tell him that I love him. No matter where we are, no matter what kind of conversation that we have, no matter if it's a harsh conversation or even if it's a direct conversation, is that at the end of that conversation, before we hang up the phone, or if we're face to face, I have to tell him that I love him.
Okay. Deacon Lee.
I have to say with my dad, excuse me, one of the first things that I was sure to implement was the things that I immediately implemented was to provide, to be present, and don't lie to my kids. My dad was a super hardcore provider. My dad was always around, and my dad didn't lie to us. We didn't always like what he said. We didn't always like the answer he gave us, but he was honest with us so we could trust him. It established a level of trust with us where we trusted our dad. And that's something that I wanted to make sure I had with my children. I wanted to make sure that my children trust me, whether they like what I told them or not, or like the answer I gave them or not. I wanted them to trust me, and I wanted them to be the provider that I was for them, and I wanted them to be present for their children like I was present for them. So those are the things that I would say that I made haste in implementing in my parenting with my kids.
Okay, Pastor Frank, sir.
I would say, like, one of the first things that I started to do was just build a trust with my child, to let them know that I was always available. Establish a bond. Those are some of the things that was important to me as a child, because my dad always tell the story about my coat and my hat, that if he would jingle his keys, that I would grab my coat and my hat, even if they thought I was asleep. So that was one of the things that I want to always have a personal relationship with my kids, that anything that I was a part of, they wanted to be a part of. I tried to influence different things in them and let them know that I was always available, no matter what. I was always going to be there for them. And you want to establish a trust system with your kids, because in building trust, and it's easy to, it goes back to the influence of Pastor John, because you're the very first teacher, as Deacon Lee was saying. You learn things from your parents, so you want to be a positive example that they look to you in everything that you do. So those are some of the first things that I try to implement, because you want your child at all times to know that I can go to daddy for anything. I can talk to daddy about anything. If I need anything, daddy is there. So you start building that relationship that's unbreakable and time can't change.
Yeah, and I can echo those same sentiments. Something that you all share. For me, it was my availability as a father, because if I wasn't there, I minimized my opportunity to influence. And so I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to do was to be there for my children, because having a front row seat, and between me and Pastor Frank, we'll double team a couple of topics, because hey, we had the opportunity to be born from the same father. But the thing is that being available and being there, like you said, to establish that trust with our children, I thought that was very important. And not only that, but when we're talking about from the position of influence, I thought it was important, to make sure that I am conveying to my children, as Pastor Frank had alluded to, that I would always be there. Now, you may not always, agree with some of the things that was a part of me being there. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't want there to ever be a time in my children's life that they knew that I wouldn't be there. And for the most, those were things that my dad echoed, because like Pastor Frank said, he was always busy being busy, doing a lot in the community, doing a lot for other people, and I don't fault him for that, because that's the nature of his heart, and I can say that I've taken that from him as well. But I think it's important in being there for other people that we also make sure that we are available to our children, which leads me to the next question, because we've been focused on, and Pastor Frank dealt with it a little bit, we've been focused on the one that has influenced us the most, and we can unanimously say that has been our fathers. But what I want you to do is look outside of the impact or touch of your father. What about other fathers that you may have saw, from a distance? And the reason why I say that, because that's important, because even in the capacity that we serve now, we sometimes don't know who's watching us and what we do. I know that for the most part, all of us in one way or another, we father our own kids, our own children, but then there are others outside of our children who may tap into us for advice or different things. So besides your father being the chief influencer in your life, who are some of the other fathers that you've come across in your life that may have influenced you in some of the ways that you are a father to your particular family? Pastor Frank, can you tackle that one first, sir?
Oh yeah. One of the, I would say the first one that really influenced me was Mr. Johnny Mass, because his son and I were classmates, and he took the time with us kids. We played in the yard, we played basketball, we played softball in the yard. His son had a motorcycle, and all of his friends, he made sure all of us were able to take turns on that motorcycle. He taught us how to ride a motorcycle. He rode a motorcycle, so he would take me around the corner on his motorcycle. I seen the way he kept his yard very well manicured. His cars was always clean. And these were things that impressed me, because I was always right there with my dad. So I was a car wash guy. I was a mechanic. I was a brick mason. I was a carpenter. And you incorporate all those things in what you see in other people. You see the way they interact. You see the way they keep their house. You see the way they keep their cars. You see the way they carry themselves in public. And you observe how people run to them. And all of these things became character building qualities in me as I began to grow and mature, and being around other preachers and other fathers. Reverend Fuller was a great influence on me from a child up. He taught me how to shine my shoes. He taught me the importance of being well groomed. I was his armor bearer as a 5-year-old kid, toting his briefcase. So you see a lot of things, and you take all of those things from different men and different fathers, and you make it a part of your identity as you grow and develop into your own. So I looked at Uncle Sam. He was my buddy. You know, we would do things together. I see the way he interacted. You see, all of these things you see from other people from afar, and some up close and personal, which help you create that fatherly feel that you're looking for, and how you carry yourself, and how you present everything that's yours, how you keep your car, how you keep your yard, how you carry yourself, and you cast this down to your children, and other people see you in public, and they gravitate to certain things about you. They see you one time and they always know who you are. And that's the way I was. Those would have been it. And I'm very much appreciative of all of those. And also Reverend Sturdivant. Reverend Sturdivant was a preacher's preacher. He was a man's man. And these guys took the time to impart in you. He would always impart. Johnny, Pastor John, you and I had an opportunity to be at his feet, be in his house, be in his churches. And we see all of these things. And now we're in the position that he was. And for me personally, those influences, early influences, and even later in my life and later in his life, are still resonating in me today.
Okay. Minister Isaac.
I would have to say that it has to be all my uncles, on both sides, mom and father's side. I think that each one of them instilled in you something a little unique. Like, for instance, my uncle JC, he was the carpenter. So in the summertime, I would go work with him. So with him, I learned how to actually put a whole roof on a house. I learned how to frame a house, how to frame walls. So that came from that. My Uncle Clyde, it came from his cooking, also his ability to work on cars. Then I got my Uncle Oliver. Uncle Oliver, he was the hustler. He always had a hustle going on. Then I got who else? Then I got my Uncle Ed. My Uncle Ed, even with his limited amount of education that he had, he was a very respectable man. He always talked to you about having respect, and for standing up for what was right. And then like different fathers throughout the community that had a like a bypass impact. Like I have one of my neighbors across the street, Mr. Smith. He was a carpenter as well, but also he's the one that taught me how to roller skate. Then all of the coaches that I had, from playing football, baseball, softball, basketball, tennis. I would never forget my tennis coach. His name is Coach Moon. Oh my God. I think that he missed his calling. I think he should have been a comedian, but the guy was an awesome teacher. I will never forget Mr. Ragland, who was one of my English teachers. He was always clean. He was always clean cut, but also he pushed you beyond your limits of when it came to vocabulary. So he wanted to make sure that you had a very strong vocabulary, so you're able to articulate and speak throughout society, and not feel that you're being challenged. So I just got a list of men that I can just actually recall, but each had, some had a direct and some had an indirect. They had a direct and indirect influence in my life.
Okay, Deacon Lee, and then I got a caveat follow up to that question. Deacon Lee.
All right, we got a lot of things in common, these guys on this panel. I would have to say my uncles as well. My dad has 6 brothers. I'm sorry, my dad had 6 sisters and 3 brothers. It was 10 of them, but all of my uncles and my dad's cousins, who I called uncles because they were all really tight. They all had a big part in influencing me. We spent a lot of time together at family reunions. We traveled a lot. We went to theme parks and state fairs and stuff. So they were always in my ear. But I have to say, most of all, I would have to say my Uncle Greg, my mama's brother. Uncle Greg, was that cool uncle. He had the Camaro. He was a DJ. He had a really nice home, had dogs in the yard, all that kind of stuff, but knowing that I was intrigued and fascinated by all of that stuff, Uncle Greg took the time to teach me what it takes to have those things. You don't have to dream about this stuff. I'll never forget him telling me that the difference between setting goals and meeting goals is execution. What are you willing to do to go get it? You got to work. It takes hard work. And he was a hard-working guy. He was a good husband. He's still a good husband. He was a good father. He was a good provider. He's just a good man. But he took the time to have those conversations with me, about life, about girls, about school, and about honesty and loyalty, and all of those things. He just instilled a lot in me. But because I looked up to Uncle Greg so much, because he was my favorite uncle, I would have to say he was the one that influenced me the most out of all of them.
Right now, and let me echo something here, because when I look at the company that my dad kept, my dad, I don't know of too many people that he was vested in men-wise that weren't, in some respect, just as hard of a worker as he was. And the majority of them had families as well. So we did have an opportunity, whether it was working on a car, renovating a house, cutting wood, no matter what. He always had a compadre in a community that he could reach out to and he spent time with. Now, I would tell you this, the one thing I would respect in that particular sense, because we were around these men, because there are times that my dad would go over their house, he would leave us there sometimes while he went and did other things. And I thought it spoke volumes that he would not leave us in the company of someone that did not have us in their best interest as well. I don't know if you guys felt that nature. So all of this is driving us to this particular point, because up until.
Thank you for watching Sunday Conversations. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. We look forward to seeing you next week as we continue to bring you relevant content. Remember, God has a purpose and a plan for your life. Live life